And so the connections of today with the internet versus when you got going, what are the impasses, what are the pains that some of us are dealing with as a whole?
Well, for me, I started off in the business before the internet, before all that. I when dealers were still using the newspaper to print the full page ads on Sundays in color, it's like 6 color, 10 color. And I was a radio and TV rep, started off in LA. And one of the things that I had to do for me, like Erica, I have a high school diploma. I did some college, but did not get a degree. And I recognized early on when the whole internet thing started with the banner ads, that this was this was something that was going to grow. And I believe it was, God on the inside of me that said, you needed to learn this. The time is now. And so that's how I started stepping over to that digital path so many years ago. And I've gone all the curves and ups and downs. You go from making a certain amount of money, being in LA, everybody, you're a part of the community. So many people know you, to going to a nobody and people saying, oh, she has no value anymore. But you have to recognize that the value is in what you're giving to yourself, so that 10, 15 years down the line, 20 years down the line, I guess 25 now, you're no longer obsolete, but you become a leader in that field, whether you have a title as a leader or whether you have the knowledge of a leader. And I wanted that knowledge, and that was important to me. And so now, being on this side of it, where I understand the full digital landscape, and I can tell you digital changes each and every day. But now I know that I can help not only just dealerships, but any type of business out there with the digital landscape and being successful in how to put your product there and move metal specifically for dealers, how to bring customers back into your dealership, and then communicating that to my dealers. Now, yes, you still have to overcome those obstacles of how much does she really know? How much can I trust her? Who is this person? But it's not even with those that don't look like me, even with dealers that look like me, getting into, and I've never been shy to say, I'm just going to go to the owner of the dealership. And I've sought out African-American dealerships and things of that nature. And you still, even with our own culture, you have to show them that you know what you're talking about, that you're there to help them grow, and that you're not there to just take from them. And so that's been my challenge, just letting them know that, hey, this is the way business has gone. I've studied this for a long time. I've lost what appears to be a lot on the surface, but what I've gained in knowledge and the spirit of what I'm bringing to you is going to be of more value and help you grow more than any other rep. I tell people all the time, there's not a lot of people like me in television that has radio, print, and digital experience and automotive experience, and worked with automotive dealerships, have gone into their dealerships and spent a day, spent a week, and just understood how it operates on my own time than any other rep probably out there. And so I'm here for you. And that going through digital has helped me with that, but it's still that education of showing you that I can bring this value to you, no matter what you look like, no matter how small your business is or how large your business is.
Excellent. Great points.
I've seen with the pandemic, I was actually excited when dealers kind of had to wake up. The pandemic was a wake-up call for so many in automotive because we had been doing things the same way for so long. And a lot of the people at the top had no idea what it was even like to buy a car because they've been driving demos since the beginning of time. So they weren't really sure of what that customer experience was like. And so when the pandemic hit and everything went digital and people are on Zoom and people are working from home, there was this bias layer that kind of got overlooked, where my GM came and said, hey, look, let's start a BDC. And I could hire women who were at home and they don't know what they look like. And then all of a sudden people start coming in the door and we're setting appointments and people are coming in and they're saying, well, what is this? I'm like, that's the BDC I told you, 2 years ago we needed to make. That's what we just did right here. But the pandemic opened up these opportunities that they didn't believe would work for people who before couldn't feel like they could do it because they couldn't work dealer hours because dealers just make it so tough to work there with the hours, with the commission pay structure, where you have a lot of moms and people with families who didn't understand how I cannot get a check for a whole month and that my bonus is going to come next month. They don't understand that. So to me, the exciting part is that the pandemic disrupted people and made them uncomfortable and made them look for opportunities that they hadn't thought of before. It displaced so many women out of their jobs, and especially women of color, African-American, Latino, Asian women. We suffered the most in the pandemic. And as we lost these opportunities and lost these jobs, we had to go back home with our kids because our kids were staying home from school. And so now you have these opportunities within automotive where you can be an appointment setter, when you can work from home, when you can help set these appointments. And now it's created opportunities and jobs for people that didn't know they existed, which is just the beginning and the stepping stone for a future career within automotive, because they started somewhere and said, wow, I didn't know I could make this much money. Wow, I didn't know that this opportunity could be for me. And it's not as bad as I think. So I'm grateful for the digital changes. I think it's waking dealers up. I think they're going to have to be more progressive if they're going to stay on top of it. And it's going to create more opportunities for women of color who didn't see themselves before and now realize that there's this tiny peephole that they can fit through and eventually grow from.
That's fantastic.
I echo Erica's points in regards, the pandemic has been very interesting, I think, for all of us. I mean, different states had different laws on how they could function. In Ohio, we were deemed essential, so we've been open the entire time for everything. So I have friends that were completely shut down and, and getting to Erica's point, truly had to pivot and shift to their online presence, good or bad, if they had one. For us, it was more or less, it was either you go to the grocery store or you come to the car dealership. So we were getting people like left and right. And I'm thinking, we can do all this with you online. Just go home. We want you to stay home and be safe. And we had the people and the tools and everything lined up because unfortunately we have had a BDC for quite some years. So understanding the value of that. So kudos to you for finally getting that in working order. But I mean, it was still a very challenging time. Like Roxanne said, from a digital perspective, it's changing daily. What I knew last month is not the same of what we're talking about this month, and it's going to change next month. So it's really making all of us to stay on our toes a lot differently than what we have done. I mean, I can still recall my dad, and this is going back to 94, when I said, hey, we need to get a website. And he was like, oh, that's a fad. It's going away. This is the man who never had a computer on his desk. And obviously, the inner workings of your company, we have, internal systems that we use to communicate. He didn't even have that. So, but knew every single number that he needed, in terms of expense or profitability, gross profit. I mean, I'm like, how are you doing all that? I got to go into the computer and find it. So, I mean, just, it sets the tone of kind of how things are. But, I think about him often and where we are in this industry. And even though we have the digital and online platforms and we have more companies at our disposal than we definitely want to at times, it's still a people business. And that's what we found during the pandemic, that regardless of how they got to us, either digitally or calling, they still wanted some type of interaction. And we still had, going back to Roxanne's point of understanding the customer and how you can help the dealer, it still goes back to that. I mean, the customer is still the reason why we're here. We can have the best programs, people, platforms, inventory, buildings, but if you don't have the right infrastructure to handle all that, it really doesn't matter, because the person walking through that door, calling on the phone, typing away at an internet lead, they are truly in control of what we all do. So, it has been a very difficult year and a half or year and 3 months, trying to make people not like each other internally, to keep them away. So I'm like, okay, now's when I need you all not to like each other. Don't huddle it, and Erica, the water, the coffee pot, and the conference room. I don't need any of that. I just need you not to like anybody within your 6 feet. Like, oh, here comes the mask police. So I'm like, yeah, here I come. So
yeah, here I go. That's it. As a person of color, do you believe that the internet and technology?
VP. So all this stuff happened where being Black was kind of the talk.
TikTok person or anything like that.
Father, I'm not a big